Oh well, let's move on. Atos. Again, see where you're coming from. We all know somebody that's on benefits, who's been on benefits of their lives, and they should be working. I know somebody, I'll give his name, that is the laziest git in lazy land, and he hasn't worked for a day in his life in over 20 years. But as far as I can see, Atos aren't going after him. And I would be harder than you. I'd say not only get him back into work and stop his benefits, I'd make him pay back the last 20 years. But what I can't get my head around are the people that have got Parkinson's, the people who've got MS, and are being told that they are likely to be able to work. Now, what was the figure that was out this week? Was it 45% of people with degenerative diseases like MS were told that they could work again? Now, and somebody else with bone cancer was told that she brought it upon herself. Now, is that targets from the DWP, or is that blatant incompetence in Atos?
No, I have no idea what the cases are you're talking about. All I can say to you is there is a set criteria. There is a programme under ESA which divides people into two groups. One is in the support group, where they're not expected to do any work at all, or in the work-related activity group, where they're expected to at least make themselves ready as far as they can possibly for work. And those that are found fit for work go into job seekers allowance. So those three areas, two of which are within ESA, one was in job seekers allowance. These health professionals are meant to assess them against set criteria and decide whether in that period, before the next assessment, they will be capable of any work at all, some work, or whether it's going to be time. For example, they may have cancer treatment or something.
Oh, sorry, Barry's waiting.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. You need to leave.
All right.
Thanks, Sue.
Thanks. So my point is that therefore, if somebody had a degenerative condition, the question is at this particular period, I don't know whether or not they were fit at that period. They may not be later on, in which case the assessment will then say after a period of time they're unlikely to be fit for work. So these things are more complicated and quite often misreported by the newspapers and by others who wish to make the most about something, and it's not true. There are, of course, always going to be cases where something wasn't right, but there is a full appeals process.
Yeah, 58% of them are upheld.
Yes, but of those who appeal...
That is so high. That is unbelievably high, isn't it?
15% of all people that get assessed actually have a case turned over by the appeals. 15%. Not everybody appeals because they're satisfied with their position. So, you know, it is not that figure. The figure is around about 15%.
But that's come from your office, isn't it?
No, that's of those who appeal, not of those.
Yes, but of those that appeal, 58%.
Yes. But you need to look at this in the round of all
that means that 50%
of all
of
the people that go through to the final decision. Something in the order of around 15 to 19%, I think it is, actually have their case changed as a result of the appeal.
But do you actually think 15 to 19% is an okay figure?
No,
I think that's quite high.
I think it's too high, but that's what we're doing. We're changing that process. We're making it better. We've had 4 reviews already by various key people.
And how much have they cost?
Well, then that's part of a rolling process. They're bedded in. There's a review all the time going on as to how these things work, whether there's a better way to do it. This, you know, I instigated this as soon as I took over. This was started by the last government employment support allowance and work capability assessment. They were the ones that wrote the contract for Atos, and I've had to modify it endlessly for the last 3 years to improve it. I've had to bring in changes to improve it for mental health sufferers. I've had to change it for people who have had difficulties and sickness in other areas. All that has been done by us, endless reviews, and we have a permanent rolling review taking place all the time, and it changes the criteria. So I think we've done a lot to make this a better assessment. Should there be assessment? Yes, because, you know, we had 1 million people who weren't seen by anybody for 10 years under the old system, and many people, their conditions get better, you know, but they weren't even bothered with. So if you're not bothered with and you sit on a sickness benefit, your chances are you're going to get worse, not better. What you need is some encouragement and help to actually be taking control of your life again. And many people who've had these assessments, gone back to work, have actually improved dramatically as a result.
I quite agree.
So, you know, this is the problem. You know, if you listen to all of the stuff that comes out about it, you'd think this is all wrong. Actually, I think the majority of people that go through this process, it benefits them at the end of the day. And there will be permanently a check on people to see how their conditions are. I think it's only fair if you're paying people and on the basis they can't work. I think it's fair to know that that is the case reasonably regularly. Are they still unfit for work? Can they be going and doing something? I think we're all better off if we can work, if it's at all possible.
But are there targets for Atos to, because there seems to be quite a discrepancy about that as to whether there are targets as to how many people they have to get back to work or how many people.
No targets. They get paid for the cases that they do.
Because we do see cases of where people have had heart attacks, where people have been in a coma, and they're getting letters saying you're capable of working. Now, is that
but again, these individual cases?
Because if it's incompetence, I'll do you a deal. I will go in, give me 6 months, I won't take the crap, and I'll sort out the incompetence.
No. There'll always be difficult cases, and the original contract wasn't particularly well written. But we're constantly making look changes. I said we've had endless reviews on this, and if Atos aren't up to the case, they won't be on the contract. That's the process constantly under review. So, the fact is you can take individual cases and you can make an issue out of it, but the reality is the vast majority of people who have gone through this programme, the vast majority have had successful and reasonable outcomes. Many of them have now been fit for work and have gone back to work, and are going back to work even as we speak. So, it's very easy to take isolated cases constantly and say, oh, well, this is an issue or a problem. Of course we can improve it.
Yes, but when they're all
this is not an easy area. There is no easy magic wand you wave suddenly that says, oh, it can all be very easily, simply done. It isn't. The reason the last government brought this in is because too many people were languishing on sickness benefits, being distant from the workforce and not getting any better. I supported them when they brought it in. What I discovered is they didn't bring in a very good contract. It wasn't particularly well written, and the process wasn't very well done, so we've endlessly reviewed it, and that's what we're doing now. We've had various professors look at it and review it constantly to improve it, and I think they have improved it, and they'll go on improving it. That's the best way you can deal with it.
Well, when do you think you're going to be likely to get rid of Atos? Because nobody's got any faith in them, have they?
I'm not in a position to discuss contracts.
Right. But nobody has got any faith in them, have they? I mean, in the review, it'll be interesting to see what comes out. But I don't think anybody's got any faith in Atos. You are seeing people in a coma getting letters.
Yeah, but
saying
again, settle on individual cases.
It's not just individual cases, though.
It is individual cases. With respect, the vast majority of people going through this system have actually benefited from it. That is the point about it, and we have kept this under review. Well, it's there. They've gone through. The vast majority of people haven't been complaining about their cases. You have people complain. They have an appeals process. That's what an appeals process is there for. These are delicate situations. So I, have absolutely all the time in the world for people who want to appeal. They get a proper appeal. They get a proper hearing. And if it turns out the appeal court didn't think that the decision was right, then they get it overturned. That's exactly how it should be.
Well, where's the evidence of the figures for the people who've had their benefit stopped and haven't gone back to work?
Well, they're on benefits. If they're on job seekers allowance, they'll go to job seekers allowance. If they're not in work, they'll continue to receive job seekers allowance.
But what about all the sanctions that are being made on people that their benefits are getting stopped?
Well, that's only if they refuse to comply with the realities. Job seekers allowance has conditionality. In other words, you are expected to make yourself available for work, to seek work, and if work comes up, to take that work. And each of the advisors will set down the conditions with somebody, and if somebody then refuses to do that or doesn't comply, and there are people that won't do that, then they're warned about this, they continue to do it, and then they will lose their benefit for a period of time. And, do you think that taxpayers should pay people for a benefit to help them back into work if they're not prepared to try and get back to work? So for people that don't want to do that, why would the taxpayer want to pay the money? The answer is conditionality. And as a result of that conditionality being clearer, I think the number of long-term withdrawals of benefit is halved in the course of this period. Why? Because people know where they're going. It was confused before. We've tied it up, made it simpler. But, the advisors don't condition somebody lightly. They do it when they have not helped or complied with the requirements. The requirement is the taxpayer pays you money on these benefits because the taxpayer rightly supports you while you're looking for work, job seekers allowance. But if you don't continue to look for work, or you find reasons why you don't want to do it, then the answer is the taxpayer is right to have this money protected by saying, well, then we won't pay you that money for a period of time till you come to your senses and realise this money is conditional. It's conditional on you trying to find work. No one gets conditioned for genuinely trying to find work. That is not the rule. The rule is if you are not trying to seek work, don't go to interviews, don't try and do your best, don't end up taking the jobs, turning jobs down, etc. Then it's very clear in the rules. But that's job seekers allowance, unless you want to take away conditionality, which I don't.
No, I see your point, but you need to move on, otherwise